Hello friends and folks, Max G here again. Now with the engineer walkthrough playthrough video with commentary, because it was asked for, and I'm also going to do a warrior one right after this. Another double feature today. So, levels that I would like to run through with this guy are again going to be Gauntlet and M13. These are two of my favorite levels to run through because they've got assault and support weapons, and they also have a nice fancy probability alternator gadget. And having either a good weapon and or a really good gadget are two of the best things that you can get, upgraded in terms of your gear. So I'm going to be trying to upgrade either my weapon or my gadget with this run, and rocking it with the engineer. And there's some cool little information tidbits I can share with you guys about this. So I'm using right now a few add-ons to make this level easier. Perspective is one of them. It draws these nice little fancy inconvenient lines to all of the golden skulls, so it makes finding them really easy. I just gotta follow the yellow lines, grab them. So if you've got this perspective add-on, there's a coding error in it. You're going to have to go into one of the DLL files, and you're going to have to replace a semicolon with like a period. And then once you've updated that DLL file, Perspective will actually work and draw these lines here for you. So if you install Perspective and it's not working right away, you might have to Google search on the forums or something like that the exact name of the DLL file that you need to alter and where it needs to be altered. And if you can't find that information, talk to me again or leave me a comment and I'll look it up for you, or I'll get that for you. But it doesn't come perfect when you install it. You have to do a little change in the one of the files, and then it works, draws the nice little lines for you, and it's a very helpful, very convenient add-on to have. You can get it to do a lot of things and draw lines to all sorts of things, basically anything your client knows about. Which there's another add-on for the healers that goes with Perspective called Heal Buddy, and what it basically does is it draws lines to all of your teammates in your raid, all of your allies, and the color of the line will change colors depending on how much health they have. So first thing I'm going to do here is change my LAS and dismiss my pets, because in this room here there's going to be running splorgs that come running around, and if they hit one of my robots, they'll deal damage to it and they'll throw my NG in combat. And I don't have anything to kill in this room. I just have to grab these tokens and survive for 2 minutes. So I don't need my bots for this. So I've basically, since I don't need my bots for this, I don't need to shoot anything, and I'm just running around for my life grabbing these tokens, I'm just switching to another LAS and not bringing my pets out. This is my tanking LAS, or sort of one. But yeah, I'm going to keep my pets not summoned, grab these things, and I don't have to worry about getting thrown into combat, and then all of a sudden I have to use my shift bar to sprint. So as long as you're out of combat, you'll auto-sprint, like I am right now, and you won't use your stamina. And it's a lot easier to get these things when you're sprinting all the time. You don't have to use your stamina. But when you get put in combat, it makes grabbing these 20 things a pain. And you'll slow down instantly as soon as you get thrown into combat. But you only get put into combat if one of these splorgs hits your bot. It doesn't throw you into combat if you just get tagged by one. So, real easy thing to do, if you can remember when you get into this room, is to just change your LAS and it'll dismiss your pets. Your bots. Just change your LAS, hit accept, grab the tokens, and then when this is over, change your LAS back, and if you have to, summon your robots and carry on. And if you had other buddies, like other allies here running around with this thing, and you were a healer, then, when your guys got roughed up from this damage here, the line would change colors from, like, green is full health, orange is missing some health, red means they're almost dead. So if you see a red line drawn to one of your allies, you would know that that's the guy that needs the heals the most. Just from the color of the line, you face that line, you run to him, you heal him, and then you run to the orange line, you run to that guy, you heal him, and you want everybody to be nice green lines. So Perspective is really convenient for finding things, for drawing lines to to objectives, and the objectives could be these golden skulls. They could be like in Stormtown's lair. They could be the other, like these little pylon things. You know, you might need to grab some flowers. Whatever your client might need to grab for an objective, it knows about. That your client knows about, it can draw a line to. So some stuff might be out of your range of vision, or out of the range of perspective, where your client still doesn't quite know about it because of a range factor, or maybe a stealth factor. Some mobs can actually stealth, like stalkers can stealth. So in PvP, it's not going to draw any lines or anything like that to it, but to enemies that are visible, if you wanted to, you could get it to draw lines to them. But that could also clutter up your UI and become a little disorienting. So usually in PvP, it's nice to, if you're a healer, have perspective draw lines to the people that need heals, but not to the other players too, because that just puts more lines on the ground than you probably need. But you know, you can customize perspective to do all kinds of things, and you can turn it on and off to draw lines to whatever you want. But it's convenient. Makes the searching for golden skulls a snap, because, well, there's a line drawn to every single one. So, and same with when you're doing objectives for dungeons. You know, finding the objectives, finding the data cubes and the lore stuff, finding anything, basically, is a lot easier when you can seriously just have a line drawn to it. And then you can follow the lines, and following those lines to things will make you discover certain things that you probably didn't even know were there. But it's another reason why it's a really good add-on to have. And then another really good add-on to have in general is Forge UI. And what that allows you to do is to customize your UI in a lot of different ways. And I like to have my UI set up so that my toon here is kind of standing in the very middle of his own crosshair. So this helps with my depth perception when I'm shooting and aiming my telegraphs, when I actually have a crosshair to use to gauge depth perception and range from my telegraphs. And my dude's standing in the middle of it, so you know, I've got my health bar, I've got the health bar of my target, you know, both within the peripheral range vision. It's like he's standing right in the middle. And then my skill bar is just down below, where I can also see it. So I can see my toon, my nameplate, my enemy's nameplate, and my skill bar, and I'm not having anything blocking my actual vision, because everything that I'm shooting is going out and forward. And it really just helps with the range, with estimating the range of your abilities a little bit better. That's what a crosshair is really supposed to do. It's to help gauge your range perception. And it does this quite effectively when you set it up like this. And I like having the colors of my nameplates nice and vibrant, so that I can see them going up or down as they do it. Because the default color for it is, I think, set to gray, and like a dark gray. And when your health bar starts to go down and you've got like a gray against a gray, you can't really see your health bar when it goes up and down really fast. And that can result in some deaths that probably shouldn't have happened, but happened because you couldn't see your health bar drop because of the colors. So all I've done here is basically added contrast to my nameplates, by making, you know, this like a bright neon bright color against a very dark background. That's added enough contrast that I can see my health bars of mine nameplate and my target's nameplates going up really easily. So this just allows for, you know, less mistakes to be made, because I wasn't able to see the amount of health of myself or my target. It's very nice to do this. And how you can do this with Forge UI is, once you've installed the add-on, you type /forge UI, hit enter, and this will bring up the options panel. And then you would go here you'd go into nameplates, or sorry, not nameplates, you go to unit frames, and then player frame, and then you can change the health bar color, the target frame, change the health bar color, focus frame, whatever. So that's how you can change the health bar colors of this and like the colors of the text from whatever they're set to as default, so you can see them better. And if you also type /forge.ui, I can show you right after this guy is dead, but there's a button there in the top left center that if you click that, it will unlock all of the elements. And by all of the elements, it means all of the nameplates and the bars and everything like that. So all of the things, and you can actually just basically from there drag and drop where you want your nameplates and your bars to be, and that's how I managed to get mine set up into this cute little crosshair here. Oh, and I got a gadget! I got a gadget, but it's not better than what I got. But I did get a tanking weapon attachment, which is awesome because I want some more tank stuff for my NG here. So I got some loot. And that was the Gauntlet here with the NG. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about my build, since I was running through that level and talking about UIs here. /forge.ui, and then you can unlock these elements, and you can drag them and place them however you want, and then once you're done, hit save, and then close. So that's how you can customize your UI and get perspective to help with drawing lines to things, and you can change these colors to whatever you want as well. And the spec that I was using here for my NG, it doesn't have the new Primal Matrix ability, the Electro Drill from the Assault tree in it, and I wasn't also using Portable Black Hole, which is in the support tree. So Black Hole is a support ability, Electro Drill is an assault ability. I wasn't using either of my new powered abilities. These are ones that anybody can use this spec or build, regardless of where you're at for your Primal Matrix progression. So this is a uniform build that anybody can use, regardless, period. And it's not too bad with the effectiveness, and I like I like the rotation of this. Its single target damage could be better, but in terms for single target damage, it's better in AoE damage. But yeah, if I wanted to spec more single target damage, then instead of Electrocute, Boltcaster is really good to have for. This is like the Spellslinger's Assassinate, or like a Stalker's like Punish or Impale. Like this is your high single target. So this fires 3 shells that deal high physical damage to 1 target. But you got to hit your 1 target with it. And if your 1 target is surrounded by multiple targets, then sometimes you've got a matter of things that are in your way. So it's nice to have AoE damage and single target damage, but if you know that you're just going to be fighting a single target for sure, then instead of Electrocute, you would want, instead of the Electrocute being spec'd up to tier 8, you'd want to have Boltcaster spec'd up to tier 8, and you would want to be spamming Boltcaster at the boss or mini boss instead of Electrocute. This is good for AoE, and it's not terrible for single target damage. But I've also got Bioshell, Mortar Strike, Quick Burst, the Artillery bot, the Bruiser bot, Target Acquisition, and Mortar Strike. So how this build rotation sort of works here is you lead off with Target Acquisition, which I leave at tier 1, and this is going to build volatility, put me at 30 volatility, and it's going to hit 1 target or several targets with splash damage, and does technology damage, but is basically to get me up to the 30 volatility threshold. After using Target Acquisition at 30 volatility, Bioshell now becomes instacast instead of having a almost 2-second cast time. So this is a high damage projectile that also generates volatility, and it also applies and expose a technology damage debuff to your target. So you hit him with this to generate volatility, and then this is instacast, does high damage, debuffs the target. And then as soon as you've landed a multi-hit throughout this entire process, you can use your Quick Burst, because this is always usable. This procs up after using a multi-hit, so, and it's instacast and doesn't require or spend volatility, so whenever this is up, use it. And then once you've fired off those 2 things there, then it's a good idea to use the Artillery bot to shoot the target again, but I start spamming Electrocute while I'm shoot this, and then start spamming Electrocute. But the thing is you want to pop your volatile injection while you're between 30 and 70 volatility. So this will give you an extra buff if you have it spec'd up to tier 4. Between 30 and 70 volatility, it will also increase your multi-hit chance by 8%. So you get an 8% multi-hit buff when you use this between 30 and 70 volatility, and it also gives you steady volatility generation, 5 volatility every 1 second for 10 seconds. And whether you use it, you know, within the 30 to 70 threshold or not, it'll still also give you a multi-hit severity and a glance and a defense. It gives you both of those empowers, an empower of multi-hit severity and increased glance chance. And speccing it up will also increase the duration, but primarily this is going to be used in your rotation to keep your volatility channeled. So while you're using your electrocute, it's going to keep feeding you extra volatility and allow you to keep your electric laser, your electrocute going for longer within the 30 to 70 threshold. And you also get a buff from it as well. And a nice thing after your target acquisition, which is the first thing that you should be shooting with your rotation, when this is left at 1, but Mortar Strike is spec'd up to tier 4, this becomes free. This is normally 25 volatility, but it becomes free of volatility cost after you hit a target with target acquisition when it's spec'd to tier 4. So dealing direct damage with target acquisition grants overcharge for 5 seconds. So after using target acquisition, you can use Bioshell, you can use Quick Burst, you can use Artillery Bot, and then you can use Mortar Strike. As long as you use the Mortar Strike within the first 5 seconds of using your target acquisition, its volatility cost will be free, and it has only a 9-second cooldown, and it'll be back up again by the time your target acquisition comes back up to be free again. And its single target damage is decent, and its AoE damage is really good. So that you can get a free cast out of this from volatility. You can get insta-cast off of Bioshell, and this just has a cooldown, the Artillery Bot. And the Bruiser Bot, what this guy is good for is this is your interrupt, or you can use this guy as an interrupt, but pressing this button will also, it'll cause him to jump on the target, interrupt it if it's casting a spell, and cast a taunt. And what that taunt will do is it'll make the target attack the Bruiser Bot instead of you. So you can use your bot to tank stuff for you, and you can also use it as an interrupter. But the one problem with the Bruiser Bot is that it requires line of sight. So if you've got one target standing in front of another and you want to interrupt the target behind what you're facing, then if you cast your Bruiser Bot, it's going to jump on the target that's right in front of you, and it's not going to interrupt the mob that's behind you. So if you find this is happening a lot and you don't want a Bruiser Bot and you don't want something that can off-tank and interrupt and you're having trouble with line of sight, the alternative is to use Zap instead. So you could ditch the Bruiser Bot and you could go for a more, say, reliable interrupt like Zap and put that on your bar here. And this will basically just deal some physical damage, and it'll apply a stun regardless of whether they're casting a spell or not. And if they're casting a spell, it will also destroy interrupt armor and you'll get a moose. So you can use Zap. And if you look at Zap here, putting my mouse over it, this is the telegraph that Zap makes. So it's a long straight line one, it's a little bit wider than Electrocute even, but that's the range and that's the width and angle that Zap will hit, and anything standing in that telegraph will take damage and be interrupted. So Zap can interrupt multiple targets that it passes through, and the Bruiser Bot can only interrupt whatever it's jumping on and anything that's standing around it casting. So this is a easier to use sometimes reliable interrupt that you can use instead of the Bruiser Bot. But the one thing that's nice about the Bruiser Bot is this has a 26-second cooldown, and if you have a Divine class set in runes, that gives you the Technician boost, which increases bot damage. So having 2 bots out, the Bruiser Bot does extra damage, and also the Bruiser Bot, he's got a health pool, so he can off-tank stuff for you, but he just basically does damage, but the cooldown on his interrupt is only 10 seconds. If you have a DS class set, if you don't have a Datascape class set, this cooldown is about 16 seconds. 16 to 20 seconds, depending on if you have point spec and cooldown reduction here. If you have all of these, it'll be 16 seconds. So 16-second cooldown on this ability. With your Datascape class set, it's brought down to 10. So this gives you an interrupt on a 10-second cooldown, and also he'll taunt whatever you cast for interrupt, whether you interrupt it or not. But a 10-second cooldown on a taunt if you're tanking, you know, plus it's an interrupt. So the Bruiser bot is really nice when you have this ability at 10-second cooldown versus zap at 26. When you need, because you can cast your Bruiser bot to interrupt twice before you can cast a second zap after using it the first time. So zap is easier to use, but you can use more interrupts period if you're just using your Bruiser bot. So that's just a personal choice. So, and I've also got artillery spec'd up to tier 4 here for the extra damage buff it gives. It gives me and my artillery bot multi-hit severity. This is for the free instacast. This here, spec'd up to tier 4, is what makes it instacast while it's between 30 and 70 volatility. And then this spec'd up is what gives you the multi-hit chance buff when you use this between 30 and 70 volatility. Here's the amps, and I'm not going to take too much time going through this because it's already been a pretty long enough walkthrough video already. But we've got cooldown reduction, and then I've also got dashing, generates 15 volatility. So if I notice my volatility starting to dip down below 30 and I want to get it quickly back up, you know, to 30, and my target acquisition, which is my only volatility generator other than Bioshell that I have, and Bioshell has a 2-second cast time, which is a pretty large dip in DPS if it's not instacast already, so I can dash to get my volatility back between 30 and 70 to use Bioshell as instacast, or just to get it back within the 30-70 threshold to use volatile injection, you know, and get my buff. So it's nice to be able to just dash and get an extra 15 volatility to get your bar back within the threshold for one of your instacasts or your buffs. It's just convenient because your dash tokens regenerate really quickly, and you end up dashing around anyways, and it gives you extra volatility, which you can use for DPS too, even if you don't, whether it's in the threshold or not. And then I got all my points spec'd up in here because that seemed like a good idea. And then this gives you armor penetration between 30 and 70. Everything is so much better between 30 and 70 volatility when you're an NG. Landing a hit, this is shrapnel rounds, gets extra AoE. It's like a bleed, an AoE bleed on your target whenever you hit them. And then you've got harmful hits, gives multi-hit chance. Landing a crit gives multi-hit. Explosive ammo, landing a multi-hit deals extra explosive damage around your target and around 4 foes. And unstable volatility, landing a hit, you know, within damage. Landing a hit of direct damage applies 1 stack of unstable volatility. Reaching 3 stacks deals extra damage. So every 3 hits you get extra damage. This is target acquisition, which you need to have spec'd to get that ability. And then this is cruising for a bruising between 30 and 70, increases my vigor by 5%. So you want to stay between 30 and 70 volatility as long as you can, really. So that's why after using Bioshell and starting to use your Electrocute or your Bolt Caster, that's when you want to use your Volatile Injection to keep it steadily flowing as you're using volatility. You'll be generating it back and staying in this threshold and keeping your buffs longer. And then Exploit Weakness, this basically, as long as you're dealing damage, physical or tech damage, it'll keep increasing your damage and debuffing the target at the same time. So, and then here, this I like volatility right between 30 and 70 volatility. I gain 5 volatility every 1 second, so this just gives me more steady generation while in the threshold to keep my buffs and damage going longer. And this is Forceful Impact. When multi-hits get, when you attack, direct attacks multi-hit, get extra assault power, and this is stacks 3 times. And this is Strike Through, which I don't really need to have, because my strike through for expeditions doesn't need to be 15%. You know, minimum 12% strike through for GA for raiding, and if you've got less than that, your attacks will get deflected a lot. If you've got 12% or more, you shouldn't be having any of your attacks deflected. And this is more strike through than I really need. But if I drop my points in there, I can put them into lifesteal. But this just gives me more sustain, and as a DPS right now I don't really need more sustain. So this, even though it's not really helping that much, does get converted to armor penetration. So this actually does increase my damage, even though the returns on it are not very high. And this doesn't increase my damage, it just increases my sustain. So that's why I chose the Strike Through over Lifesteal and everything else. And I've got 1 extra amp point, which I spec'd into armor penetration, which is better than Strike Through here, because the conversion is straight armor penetration and it doesn't get diminishing returns like Strike Through does. Cool. And that's how and why I've spec'd my amps, and that's the video. Uploading this to YouTube, and gonna have another one for the Warrior coming at you guys soon. Cheers, enjoy.